This interview looks back to the years before Linkies took over the building, when between 1976 and 1980, James Sean ran the hall as a boarding school for boys with emotional difficulties and retiring personalities.
I think I started here in September 1978, and I was here for a full school year, so I would have left in the July. I was a classroom teacher. I don't really understand what a retiring personality is and whether or not that's a suitable description of the children that were here. What do they call it? Head psych speak. I think that might be, I haven't heard that expression before, and I'm not sure that it's a true description of the children that were here. We didn't have an awful lot of teaching staff here, but I do remember a teacher, a lady, she actually lived on Wheelsby Road, and her name was Jill. She was quite a bit older than me. I think she would have been in her mid-40s at the time, but I can't remember her surname. And then there was another chap called John Hall, who was quite a well-known musician in the town, and he'd been in teaching for a long time. And I would have thought he, again, was much older than me. I would have thought he would have been late 40s, early 50s at the time.
And was the support staff around?
A lot of support staff, a lot more support staff than teaching staff. Domestic staff, obviously, in the kitchens, and not necessarily cleaners, but yeah, kitchen staff. But then a lot of what were called house parents, which were staff who were with the children before they came into the classrooms from 3 o'clock in the afternoons. There were staff on duty all night, obviously, with the children, with the boys, and weekend staff. I don't particularly remember outside staff. I don't remember gardeners or anything like that. I think there were 3 terms, and I think some of the boys would stay during half terms, but the boys were sent home. I remember delivering boys to the train station, and I don't think they were accompanied. I remember doing the London train, and I would take the boys to the station in my car, and the guard would be aware, but I think I just put them on the train. I can't remember. And then I think of social, because in those days I think the train was direct to London possibly, but I don't remember anybody going with them. And I think they were supposed to be met by social workers at the other end. But there was certainly one instance when I know of a boy who wasn't met by a social worker at the other end and just lived rough for the whole of the Christmas holiday. No, largely they weren't local. They came from other authorities. I remember Birmingham, particularly Liverpool and London, and possibly Newcastle, or, yeah, but certainly not. There might have been a couple of local boys, actually, now you say that. Maybe Hull, maybe from Hull, because that's where Jim Syme had been working. Just having to try and meet the needs of the children individually and addressing their needs, their psychological and behavioural needs. It was challenging. And of course, the boys were disengaged. They didn't want to learn, most of them, not remotely interested. They're just, yeah, it was very challenging, especially for a young teacher like I was at the time.
Was this your first placement here? Or?
Yes, it was. I'd worked, I think I'd done some supply work before that. When I left university, interestingly, teaching jobs were very, very hard to find. There'd been a shortage about 5 years before that sent so many students through that by the time I left, there were hundreds of teachers new teachers trying to find jobs, and there weren't the jobs for them. So it was 3 or 4 years where it was quite challenging for young teachers to find a placement, which is probably one of the reasons why I came here. Well, I was fascinated, as I think most people were, because you can't see it from the road, and obviously it had been a private house. So Yes, intrigued, really. It was, I would have said, faded glory, faded splendour, and a bit utility. But by the time I got here, the school had been operating, I think, for a couple of years. And so, of course, the boys had been around for a while. And I say it was all pared back. There weren't, I don't remember pictures on the walls. I don't remember certainly spare furniture anywhere, or it was all utility furniture, just what you needed, and everything was either screwed down or locked up. I remember it being there because you'd drive past or walk past it, but I don't remember anybody going in there. And I don't even remember stories of boys hiding in there or I don't remember any of that. I don't remember that at all. And I read that there were smells of tobacco. Well, there would be smells of tobacco because the kids were having a fag out the back. The staff would be smoking. It was in the days when, so no, I certainly, and I don't think you'd have noticed if it wouldn't have been like today. If someone had been smoking in here, you'd know about it. You'd smell it. Well, in those days, how you can say that you could smell tobacco, I don't know, because it was everywhere. Everybody seemingly would smoke, and not outside. I know the Slight family. I know members of the Slight family, and I've always been aware that this was the Slights. I think my friend, a guy called Jeff Slight, I think it was his great-grandfather who built the house. So, yeah, I know a little bit about it from that perspective, but that's all. No, I think the gardens, when I arrived, when I came round in September, I was totally, once I got in the house, I could sort of see it was fairly similar to how it had been. But the gardens, you could see they had been beautiful. I think that, I haven't been out of the front, but I think there were lovely steps down and you could see where the beds had been. I think there were a few sort of ornamental statues or urns and things, I think, were in the garden still. But all the building that's been done, as far as I'm aware, I was completely disorientated in the garden because none of those new buildings were there. So it took me a while to get my sort of bearings in the garden. Whereas as soon as I walked in the house, it was all very familiar, or fairly familiar. The areas that I knew, if you like. But no, the gardens did Foxton.